Good morning and welcome to Muscle Maintenance with InShape Fitness. I'm Coach Kim, and today's Functional 5 is another version of the exercise routine that I did yesterday, but we're going to mix up the order a little bit and try to make this a little more, a little less sort of straightforward and basic, especially since I know that if you're doing your exercise regimens at home, which now hopefully everyone is, the worst thing in the world would be the worst thing in the world right now would be to be sick or to have a loved one who is sick. And I'm really sending all of my love and good wishes to people around the world who listen to this podcast, hoping that everyone is doing okay, taking all of the strange new realities in stride. And listening to this podcast is part of that, because this is about really basic movements, functional exercise without equipment that you can do in your home when you first wake up, a concept I have been talking about for years. Most of my clients I'm not seeing anymore. In fact, all of my clients, I'm not seeing anyone right now. I'm just talking to people via Zoom and Google Hangouts, and that kind of thing. If you want to get in touch with me at bodybyInshape.com, we can certainly reach out to you and help you individually with exercise routines. But the concept of getting up and stimulating the body from a functional perspective isn't about like going on vacation and looking your best in your bikini on the beach. It's or looking your best in a black dress at a party or whatever. It's about being able to get through the day, to survive optimally in a physical state. So when you wake up, your body is not fully awake yet, right? We think about how the brain takes a little bit of time sometimes to wake up. Often that is, the stimulant is coffee or tea or, just sort of being up for a few minutes, maybe catching the news. But the body also is still kind of dormant when you're first getting out of bed. And instead of just sitting out of your bed, standing up and going to your desk to sit down and start working, take 10 minutes, and in the Functional 5's perspective is really just 5 minutes, but take the extra couple of minutes to exercise a little bit so that you can turn on all of the cylinders, right? Like jazz up the body a little bit, jack up your tummy muscles, correct your posture, think about your heart rate. If you exercise to a slightly aerobic capacity, you're going to, to get your metabolism underway for the day. And that way you can be a little more productive. Your body doesn't fester in a state of sedentary madness that we're all feeling. Whew. Even just saying those words makes me a little bit crazy, because I'm in New York City, and it's tough here. Being stuck in my house with my family isn't great, but that's not the worst of it. Just sort of seeing the people that I know. I'm starting to learn about people that I know who are affected by the coronavirus, by COVID-19, and it's just heartbreaking knowing that where we're headed, where we are, and where we're headed, and what we should have been doing before to prevent the kind of reality that we're going to be living in here soon in New York. So with that, though, let's go back to our normally scheduled excitement for the day, which is the Functional 5. And the Functional 5, as I explained yesterday, is a really, really basic regimen of 5 exercises, 1 minute each, for a total of about 5 minutes. Now, oftentimes that strings out, at least for me, my 5 turns into 6 or 7. 5 minutes turns into about 10 or 12. But whatever it is, taking 5 minutes is perfectly suitable if you don't normally do this. And so yesterday we started on the floor. Today I want to start on your feet. So let's just start with jumping jacks, because nothing wakes you up. I do these first thing in the morning before I actually start my 5. I tend to just get out, literally I jump out of my bed and do them right beside my bed. With the jumping jack, because jumping is, it doesn't have to be a big jump, right? It can be like a really tiny little bunny hop, almost like a slide of the legs out a little bit so that you feel you've got those inner thigh muscles and they're really small and they're really inactive, but you can feel a little bit of that stretch as you open your legs up and you kind of extend out Don't turn your toes out. Try to keep your feet straight, and then lift your arms up over your head and touch at the top. Your elbows can be bent a little bit, but you want to touch at the top because then you activate and open up the sides of your body, right? The lateral parts of your body, the inner thighs, the outer thighs, the top part of the outside of your leg, which is the top of the butt, the gluteus medius, your oblique muscles, your shoulders, the sides of your neck even, the lateral parts of your body don't even get that much exercise if, for example, your big, your significant output right now is maybe going out for a walk, which hopefully you are doing, or a jog or something. You're still just basically using your front muscles, your front and sometimes the muscles on the back of your body. So the side muscles with the jumping jacks are great. It's been 60 seconds since I started talking about jumping jacks. So if you were doing them the entire duration, I don't count them. It doesn't really matter how many you do, but about a minute worth of jumping jacks is great. That 60 seconds, you probably can do, 40 or 50 of them at that clip. So those are jacks. Now, let's do some basic squats, right? With the squat, the reason we do squats is because we interact with gravity when we do squats. And there's a former scientist from NASA, a woman named, what is her name? Oh, I'll think of it in a minute. She wrote a book. She was a life science director, which means that she basically studied the biology of the astronauts' bodies when they came back to Earth after being in space. So she knew what the effects are of the anti-gravity conditions in space on Earth once the astronauts got back. And her theory is that there's an anti-gravity condition we're creating for ourselves by sitting all day. So when we interact with gravity, so you're going to sit into a squat with your feet about hip width apart, your toes don't turn out, but you sit into an imaginary chair or a real chair if you choose. That's fine too. Then you stand up, and you stand up with control. You stand up with the sort of slowness of making sure that your brain is contracting the glute muscles and pressing your heels into the floor a little bit, using the body to lift up. Don't bend too far forward too. You want to keep your core engaged. Your belly button is pulled in a little bit and you keep those shoulders back. So that is the way that you stand up from a squat. And in doing that, forcing your body to lift up and push up against gravity, you're activating your heart rate a little bit. You're, boosting your metabolism. It can be an aerobic exercise when you do them over and over again. So to conduct squats over the course of about a minute, again, could be a lot or could be a few, depending on whether you take some breaks. But if you take your time, you don't want to drop into a squat and then bounce right back up real fast, right? You don't want momentum to help you out when you execute your squats. You want to control your movement in both directions, particularly when you change directions at the bottom. That helps you get the most bang for your buck in terms of that 1 minute production of squats. So we did jumping jacks and squats. The next thing that we're going to do is lunges. Yesterday they were number 3. Today they're number 3 because they're right there in the middle. With squats, we're still interacting with gravity, which continues to be important. And when we interact with gravity in a lunge, the added difficulty is that you're making the left leg work separately from the right leg. Whereas with the squats, they work at the same rate, which means if you're right-legged or right-handed, therefore right-legged, your right leg is probably doing a little more work than your left leg, which you would never know. But with your lunges, which we're going to do, let's do reverse lunges. Actually, yesterday we did forward lunges. So we'll do reverse lunges where you stand up really tall, you extend your arms out to the sides, and then keep your right leg stable, right? Because if you're right dominant, you're going to move your left leg first. And that left leg extends back, far back, and then you bend both knees, lowering the body straight down without bending forward. You want to keep your tummy muscles pulled in, just like with those squats. Keep your chest back, your shoulders back rather, and your chest forward. And bend both knees. And so you make 2 90-degree angles. Now, if you have knee issues and you can't execute a full deep knee bend, you're going to shorten the executed lunge, the angle, and do a partial lunge, and then maybe stay in that lunge and pause there. Make sure that you are in total control of all the mechanical parts of your body, so that you don't take any unusual risks. So 30 seconds with the left leg, and then you've got to stabilize the left leg with the reverse lunge. This makes it a little bit harder. Your right leg is going to extend back, and then you execute the lunge with the right leg in the same way as with the left. So those are lunges that are in the reverse. Maybe tomorrow we'll just do variations on lunges. So tomorrow too, we'll do some squats with some variations as well. Maybe tomorrow we'll add in some sumos and some kicks and stuff. Friday, since we're going to be doing these every day of the week, what we'll do on Friday is we'll do a mashup where we'll do the same 5 exercises, but we might mix up the order. Mix lunges and squats and jacks in together while we're on our feet, so that it's a little more interesting. Okay, but now we're going to go down to the floor. We're going to go into a plank, because a plank is a production in your body, a biomechanical condition where all of the muscle layers in your trunk have to unify as a team and work together to stabilize your position, levitating kind of over the floor, right? So you're on your elbows and your shoulders make a straight line up and down, and then you extend your body back and you're on your toes, you're on your feet. If that's too hard for you to do, you can lower down to the fleshy part of the bottom of your thigh, not really the knee bone, but you want to rest on the bottom of the thigh so that you can keep your butt down, so that you can activate that isometric contraction. It's not something you do automatically, it happens. And that the reason for that is, again, because of gravity. Gravity is just such an important part of exercise. To understand it a little bit is good, because when gravity is bearing down on you standing up, the surface of your head and the top of your body is where where you interact with gravity. So gravity bears down on you. The top of your head, is a few square inches, and your shoulders. But when you're elongated in horizontal position across the surface that is absorbing the pressure of gravity is much greater, and you're above the air. You're having to use your elbows and your shoulders and your feet to stabilize your body. So gravity has really got an edge here, and that's why it's so difficult to hold the position. But you're well over a minute at this point in terms of the required 1 minute for plank. Again, holding a plank for a minute is a really good barometer for your fitness level. And we'll talk about push-ups next week, maybe, because push-ups are another really good barometer for your fitness level. If you haven't been used to doing push-ups and you're cloistered in a shelter-in-place kind of order, or on quarantine, and you're still trying to take good care of yourself, you got to get used to and make nice with these really simple exercises like plank and push-ups and lunges and hip bridges, which is what we're going to do next and last, is the hip bridge. Basic body weight calisthenics can be all you really need, with coupled with walks and jogs and maybe throwing and catch and doing some yard work. I mean, these are the exercises that people did 100 years ago. We didn't have gyms until Jack LaLanne basically turned the world upside down in terms of creating commercial spaces for exercise. People just did this stuff and labored at home, and ate better. So we won't talk about that, but that was a big thing too. Anyway, let's get back to the hip bridge, because on the hip bridge, you're lying on your back, you're looking up at your ceiling, and your hands are beside your body on the floor, and you bend your knees and you keep your feet straight again. I'm real big on keeping those feet straight. Don't turn out your toes, and then make sure your feet are about hip width apart. Then you lift up into the hip bridge. And that is the bridge. So this is the basic bridge, and staying here for a minute, not moving, is a functional 5. So, each of those things, again, for 1 minute, is the functional 5: jumping jacks, squats, lunges, plank, and hip bridge. Super, super simple. Hip bridge can get we can do lots of different variations. Even yesterday, on the first day we did this, we also, we did a few bridges with dips where you lower your butt and then lift up to your hip flexors fully extend. You want to make sure when you lift up that you don't arch your back. You don't want your pelvis tilting as you lift up, which is hard to do, believe it or not, if you're used to sitting around all day. If you don't exercise regularly and you're used to sitting around all day, even if you do exercise regularly, but you still sit around a lot, you might have a condition known as lordosis. And that is where the pelvis has begun to tilt forward because of the amount of time you sit down on your butt. And that pulls on your hip flexors. It makes them weaker and tighter, in addition to the fact that you are sitting, so you're naturally actually contracting your hip flexors and causing issues from that perspective. But because the pelvis tilting in a particular way, you're also contracting the lower back and straining the trunk in that way as well. So with your hip bridge, you want to pull in your belly button towards your spine, and then as you lift up, you will feel maybe you might get a sense of what that right angle feels like with your knees as you lift up. The hip flexors, once they get to that right angle, around that right angle point, you're going to feel the hip flexors in the elongated position. Just don't go past that, because that's when the arch of the back happens. So you lower down and you lift up. You can also try these with one leg in the air. Same as yesterday. If you lift up the lift up the left leg first if you're right-legged, right dominant. Because your right leg will probably it will be harder, but you'll be able to execute a couple of the hip bridge dips with your right leg. It's lifting up the right leg and then executing hip bridges on just your left leg. The variation between the two is another barometer that I use with my clients to assess the difference between the dominance of the right side versus the left side. That is not something that is like a top priority for early exercising, but it does become something that is sort of acutely can manifest itself into issues related to overuse and little irritations. If, for example, you take up jogging, which if you know me and my company well, you know that's actually where we try to funnel people through, basic calisthenics and then, everyday exercise, working with a trainer a couple times a week, and then getting to the point where you maybe sign up for a 5K if we ever get to do those again, or a 10K, or even something as crazy as a marathon. Because once you exercise on a regular basis, then some of those manifestations, like the right dominance issue and the left side weakness issue, will start coming into play a little bit more. But we're a long ways from that, right? We're here on, it's March 25th in New York City. I took a whole week to basically get my family straight and settled. And my daughter started, kind of homeschooling and distance learning with her school system in public schools in New York City. It's a lot of craziness in terms of that transition, and just sort of managing everything here in New York has been really hard. So it's my first full week back as a podcaster. Tomorrow, we'll do another one of these sessions, and I'll be talking today, or rather this week, later in the week, at the other podcast channel that I have called the In Shape Fitness Show. We're going to be talking about the coronavirus and the implications for exercise on this new reality that we're living in. So don't miss that as well. But for muscle maintenance, I'm going back to everyday exercise routines, getting up before my family gets up, first thing in the morning, to have a little bit of sanity. And I'll be recording the muscle maintenance moves every day. So come back tomorrow, and I'll see you then.